young people that they were seeing and referring to the blocker were not the young people of the Dutch studies which underpin this, which themselves are not particularly strong, as I know you've discussed a million times. But to apply a limited evidence base to a completely different group of people, they were like, you know, and it's bizarre because, you know, when this was happening in 2015, 2016, you know, the team in Finland had noticed exactly the same thing, that actually the young people we're seeing are not the people of the Dutch study. They're not psychologically stable. They're predominantly girls whose distress has started in adolescence. GIDS was seeing exactly the same thing, but those conversations were not coming out of the clinic. And even, you know, Dr. Polly Carmichael and Dr. Bernadette Wren, they told the UK Parliament, they were open about it. We don't just prescribe, they don't prescribe, but we don't just refer young people for whom there is some evidence that this helps. We've extended it to those, you know, who are living in care, who are autistic, who are struggling. Now, I don't think there was no ill intent there, but it certainly wasn't evidence-based. They thought they were extending it to help people. But I think when data came back that actually some of those young people weren't being helped, they didn't change direction either. And that's what's surprising.
I think for me reading it, like 2004, 2005, Sue Evans made you know, she kind of effectively blew the whistle. David Taylor wrote an extensive report with a lot of recommendations, and she was deeply upset 20 years later or 15 years later when she sees what he wrote was exactly on the money, what needed to be done then. So we're talking about 2005, 2006. It was a haphazard, messy, I would argue, as a psychotherapist, from my point of view, an unthought out clinic. They didn't know what perspective they were taking. They were just as you go. Sue didn't agree with some people's way of doing it. There wasn't an actual, we as a clinic. For example, they were situated in the Tavistock, which is famous for analysis, and they didn't bring a psychoanalytical framework into it.
Well, I think some did, and you know, I think, and Sue says, no, but I think there's been this problem, if you like. I don't know if problem's the right word, but there isn't agreement on really anything, because, you know, there isn't agreement on what it is being treated, and I use that in the very loosest sense, not to pathologise. And therefore, if you can't agree on what's being treated, it's very difficult to know what the best way to treat it is, and even indeed how you measure a successful outcome. So, you know, when this early audit was done it was published in 2002, it sort of raised this issue of, well, are young people distressed because they are trans? And that is distressing because, you know, what you're not in the identity you want to be, or are people trans because they're distressed? And I think as time went on, that fundamental lack of agreement on how to frame it, you know, if you believe that someone can be born trans, then the treatment that you would administer would be very, very different to someone who believes that actually a trans identification can sometimes be as a result of something else, or even somewhere in the middle, that, you know. And so without a fundamental agreement on what it was, then there could be no agreement on how to help those young people, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
exactly.
And then in 2011, you started the GIDS started the study of, that's when it got serious, because they said, right, let's do a study on how are these children faring finally on puberty blockers. Let's see.
Yeah.
And as you said, the kind of the holy fuck kind of moment was in 2016, when the results of that came out, and it was like, stop everything. The only thing good about this is the clients are happy, because the actual clinical measures are saying this is not working. This is not a clinically successful trial on any level.